yeah, so a lot of people actually have questions about burlesque, whether it's, truly feminist or not. Um, and I have a lot of thoughts on that as well. But a lot of them are related to this topic of self love being a form of resistance. And so, in the burlesque context, like getting up on stage and publicly declaring that you are a sexual being and you are sexy and that people find you sexy and that you're fulfilling your own desires in a world that tells us, that actively tries to make us hate ourselves, is an act of resistance, in my opinion. It's not for everyone, and that's cool. But getting up there and being like, I love myself, and all the things that I was told aren't sexy, I'm claiming them and claiming them as sexy, is is fucking empowering. IMO. So similarly, uh, like we're all told various messages, particularly if you're a woman or if you're a marginalized person in some capacity, um, if you have a disability, if you're BIPOC, if you're LGBTQ spectrum, um, if you're, I think it's called neurodivergent, but if you're fat, any of those identities, among many others, um, there's a lot of rhetoric and active work to make us believe, um, and I say us as a woman because I don't have, I'm not marginalized in many other ways, and I have a lot of privilege. Um, but to make marginalized folks believe that they are not worthy or that they are not enough. I mean, I would argue that we live in a society that wants everyone to believe that they're not enough, except for the people who um, control it. So like white cis hetero men. But yes, we have these messages that we're told for a really long time that we're not enough, and um, when we become adults, we may not believe them consciously, but they're there. They're Those thoughts are really pervasive, and I think in coaching, a lot of what we do is identify those thoughts, um, and because we're not even aware of them, they're driving the bus a lot of the times, and a lot of times we are just going about our lives, reacting to thoughts. We're having a thought, not our thought. It's a thought that's programmed. We're having an emotion. We're maybe not aware of it, and then we're reacting to that emotion. And then we're like, I don't understand why my life is, in flames. Because we have these thoughts, and our brain is often trying to prove these thoughts right. So, like, if you have these thoughts that you're not worthy and you're not enough, you will do things that try to prove that right. And you will seek out people that prove that theory right. And that will continue to um, support your worldview, if you will. Um, what I find really encouraging about this is that, or liberating, is that those thoughts aren't actually mine. Even though I'm having them, and even though they're, often causing me grief or driving the bus, I don't actually believe them. They're not actually mine. They're just there. Um, and so part of it is like, not judging ourselves for having those thoughts. A lot of us have a lot of judgment about them. Um, and like, I shouldn't think this, and I shouldn't, especially for folks who are, like, I consider myself to be a fairly critical thinker, and I've done a fair amount of work on myself. And I still have thoughts, all kinds of thoughts that aren't helpful. I have like negative thoughts about my body and about my personhood, personality, and my worth based on all kinds of things, and like this perfectionism and all these things. And a lot of times the judgment is about the thought, like, fuck, I shouldn't be having this, I should know better. But like, in some ways for me, it's relieving or comforting to be like, it's not my thought. And of course I'm having that thought. Of course I'm thinking that because that's a programmed thought, and that's been a long time. And those are subliminal messages that you receive all the time that are, that are infiltrating your brain when you're not even aware of it. Like, we live in a society, we live in a patriarchal society that is a capitalist society that actually needs us. Like, it needs marginalized people to believe that they are not worthy in order to continue the way that it is going. And it needs, like, people to not believe they're worthy enough, people, for example, women, to not believe that they are enough, to like actively hate themselves so that they can sell shit back to us in order for us to feel happy or to think that we're being happy. And they want us to be so fucking distracted. Like, self-hatred and like self self improvement in the way of like getting our hair and nails and makeup done, and being preoccupied with not taking up space and being quote unquote a good woman, is it keeps us distracted. It keeps us from distracted from being taking part in our political systems. Keeps us distracted from like being able to show up in the world in the way that we want to and should. It keeps us preoccupied. So there's a method, like it's strategic to make us hate ourselves. It's strategic to make marginalized people believe they're not enough, because the society as it is functions based on that. And if people start recognizing their own worth and um, you know fighting back and loving themselves regardless, it is threatening. It is threatening. And people, like, that's why I say, like, a woman who loves herself is dangerous, because she can't be controlled, and she can't be contained and doesn't follow the norms, and we don't know what to do with that. And so what do? We police them. We make them feel shitty, we slut shame them, we call them bad mothers, whatever it is, because they're threatening, and they're a threat, just like any marginalized identity is a threat to the system. If they're actively being like, no, I fucking deserve more, and I deserve all the things that anyone else does, and I love myself despite the fact that I've been told time and time again that I am not enough. So, I might be ranting. Yes, Mary, it keeps us non-threatening. Exactly. It keeps us non-threatening, which is part of the incentive, or part of the reasoning. I'm curious, for the folks who are still here, like, what is the messaging that we got that was what is a good woman? What makes up a good woman? I'll wait. I don't have anywhere to be. Mary, I'm counting on you. I don't know who's in my Facebook here. Selfless. First I thought it said selfies, but also absolutely selfless, modest, for sure. I think selfless is a big, huge piece of it, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Subservient, for sure. Agreeable, yes, Shannon, totally. Anyone else? There's a lag. Okay. You probably had those up for a while. That's okay. Thanks for participating. Um, totally. All those things. Like, I think that, like, self hatred and that that self-sacrifice and like, yeah, being humble, but like not being too, being sexual and like, or sorry, being attractive, and like our power and worth comes from being attractive, but like not too sexual, and like being loyal and modest, humble, complacency, always accommodating and tending to everyone else's needs first. Yeah, for sure. um I had the non-threatening thing up for a while. Oh, gotcha. um, yeah, so all those things. And I think the thing about being sort of this complacent, not taking up space, um, tending to other people's needs, and being selfless is a rhetoric that really, well, it's really damaging. Um, but it makes it really hard for a lot of us to have self care as well, and self care in a way that is like real self-care. So not so they sell us back self-care as like something we can buy, right? Like, oh, you know, you work hard, so like you don't have time for this, like have a bubble bath and like get a facial. But like self-care in the sense of like actually like having boundaries and having like a life and identity outside of being a mother, and like being able to rest and be able to say fucking no to things, and like not giving a shit what people think, and being able to go after one's desires, and being able to spend time cultivating things that feed us and with people that feed and fuel us. All of those things are what I think is self-care. But that goes against that rhetoric that like, but you're selfless. Like the amount of women that I like coach and know that feel like they're being bad moms because they want some time to themselves. Like you're, I get it, because that's not your thought. Like that is not actually your thought. That's a thought that's been ingrained in you because that again serves the system well. Um, but yes, being self-care being sold as a placator, placator. I don't know that word, but yes, self-care being sold to us. Um, what was I gonna say? Yes, that, you know, as that idea of being selfish is ingrained in all of us, and so it prevents us from being able to take actual real self-care. Um, so that's what I mean when I say things like self-love are acts of resistance, because it goes against the status quo. It goes against everything we've been told, that we like loving ourselves despite the fact that we have flaws, loving ourselves despite the fact that we are, you know, not all the things that we're told we're supposed to be, um, is threatening, and it is political. It is a form of resistance. Placate. Okay, placate us. Yeah, that makes sense. Another way to keep women in their place by doing their nails and having a bubble bath. Totally. And it all fits the script of being like still being attractive, right? Like self-care that still makes you like look better or feel better. Um, More busy work, really. Disguised as self-care for sure. No, I would say busy work and preening. Like again, self-care is like taking care of yourself so you look better and your value is more, because you're showing up in the world as an attractive or more attractive human, rather than like somebody who's just like maybe eating ice cream as part of your self-care, or like napping, whatever. um, it's also a non-threatening activity for sure. For many people, like being involved in political or activist things in whatever capacity is part of self-care, um, and part of community care, which is also something that doesn't get talked about, but we don't get told that. Absolutely. So I think I was just talking about basically loving yourself, despite being told all those other thoughts, all those other things that we've been told our whole lives. Still loving yourself despite that, is an active resistance. even accepting yourself, even if you're not at self-love, accepting, or even starting to believe like maybe the shit that I've been told isn't true, and like maybe I just have a right to exist like as I am. Maybe I don't have to be perfect, and maybe I can just like be a person in the world that has a right to be here without having to fucking prove it all the time or fit a certain mold. Even just getting to that point is a form of resistance. It goes against the status quo, and that is how we start to make change. So to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, burlesque isn't everything for everyone, but I think for many people that is a form of resistance, of it is one step of many of like publicly declaring that you, maybe if you don't even feel like you love yourself, but in that moment you can feel like you're sexy, or you can feel like you can own and claim parts of your sexuality that you were ashamed of before, or that you can even be sexual or sensual publicly, um, when you felt like you weren't able to do that because you weren't, pretty enough or thin enough or white enough or um, young enough or whatever the enoughs are. To be like, sexy is like a fucking state of being. It's not a body type. It's not a look. It's something that we embody, that we all have, and we get to be the deciders of that. Um, it's also a form of resistance. So anyway, I thought this was going to be quick, but that's always the way. Um, yeah, so that's a lot of what we do in coaching, is really begin to recognize those thoughts that we have that aren't ours, that have been driving the bus around, like when we are constantly seeking validation from other people, and because we don't actually believe in our own inherent worth, and we're like constantly looking for this external validation, and all the ways that we do that, all the time we spend worrying about what other people think of us, or what they're doing, or getting our confidence and from other people. It can be really, really problematic. No, you didn't get me off track. You were keeping me right on, Mary. You're like echoing exactly what I'm. We're on the same page, so it's great. No, I'm not alone out here. Yeah, so that's, if you have questions about that, about coaching. My face is really red, and I swears to you that was my first sip of wine. I think it's maybe just the light ring and the passion about the patriarchy. Um, yeah, you're my hype woman, Mary. Thanks. So, and I am yours. Yeah, so that's, yeah, if you have questions about that, about how we work around paying attention to the thoughts that you have, and how they're driving your bus, and how they're not actually your thoughts, and how you can change them, just get at me.